Equity Mates, from our mates at Spaceship. Investing made easy.
Welcome to another episode of Equity Mates. We are back for another week here on Monday. Big week in stall. My name is Bryce, and as always, I'm joined by my equity buddy, Ren. How are you going?
I'm very good, Bryce. Good to be back. Socially distanced.
Yes.
New background.
Still?
Yeah. What more can you ask for?
That's true. We did say that we'd open up the background to some of our listeners, and we haven't had anyone.
Well, I actually haven't asked
That's
AusBiz
actually a good-
if anyone came in.
And we actually didn't ask anyone from our audience, so no wonder it's still the same. But good feedback though, so let's keep up the background. But Bombers did also win on the weekend.
True.
And so did the Swans.
As did the Swans, so it's going to be a high energy week from us,
High-energy
as
week.
people can tell from our intro here.
But look, we have a big week of experts coming up, as always, which we're excited about. But today, we are going to be having a look at the latest $1 trillion company, Ren.
Yeah, well, no longer a trillion, but it was.
Well, there goes our segment.
For a brief moment, it was $1 trillion.
For a brief moment, it was a trillion.
The world's latest $996 billion company.
And that is Facebook. Facebook, over the last few days, last week, hit the $1 trillion mark. Not the first company to do so, as we will discuss, but we're going to talk through, obviously, what has happened if you didn't catch the news, put it in perspective in terms of some of the other massive companies out there, and then have a look at what it means from a bull and bear case point of view. So, $1 trillion, it's
$1 trillion.
It's a lot of money.
You said it wasn't the first. I believe it's the sixth.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
But it may not have been the first, but it was the fastest.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Apple, Microsoft, they've been around since the 80s, you know?
True.
Facebook, founded in 2004, and it reached $1 trillion 17 years after being founded, 9 years after going public.
Unbelievable.
So an incredible rise. I mean, we're not breaking news here to say that Facebook has been an incredible business story. But yeah, the fastest company to ever reach $1 trillion US. Tough mark to beat.
Tough.
Yeah.
So Apple's 2 trillion, right?
Over. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure it went from its growth from 1 to 2 trillion was
Oh, it was like a year.
incredibly fast. Incredibly fast. I mean, yeah, it's 9 years after going public though. You love to see that.
As an investor.
As an investor, yeah.
So the companies to hit the $1 trillion mark before them, Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, Alphabet, and can you name the last one?
No.
Saudi Aramco.
True, but didn't it float at $1 trillion?
Yeah. It's still true.
True.
So, as you said, we're going to talk about how they actually hit the $1 trillion mark, because there's a really interesting story there that is quite notable for people investing in these big tech companies. Zoom out, talk about perspective, talk about the bull and the bear case. So let's start with how they reached that $1 trillion mark. There was a big court ruling that went in their favour, and that really tipped them over the edge. Mm-hmm. So tell us about what happened.
So we know that for a while now, there's been a lawsuit brought against Facebook from the FTC scrutinising Facebook's monopoly power.
Yeah.
And you know, a lot of governments around the world have been watching this one closely.
Yes.
A lot of consumers and other businesses in media have been watching this one closely. So it was brought to Facebook by the FTC and 46 other US states. Yeah. Pretty significant.
Can you name the states that weren't involved?
It would be the 52 states minus 6 that weren't involved.
The 50 states.
50 states, or whatever.
Alabama, Georgia, South Dakota, South Carolina.
Weren't involved.
Don't know why those 4 decided not to participate. Guam and the District of Columbia signed on, the 2 territories. But yeah, those 4 states, big fans of Facebook.
Interesting. But it didn't get over the line. The judge said that the FTC lawyers failed to show that Facebook did actually have a monopoly power.
Let's be clear, it didn't even get to the line. It was in the dressing room, stretching, warming up. Race was in like 15 minutes, and the judge didn't even let them come out and get to the starting line.
There you go.
Yeah, they said, the judge said the FTC failed to show that Facebook had monopoly power and that they'd waited too long to bring their arguments in relation to the Instagram acquisition, which was in 2012, and the WhatsApp acquisition, which was in 2014. So the judge sent them home.
So you're meaning that the judge actually said, you're just taking too long to bring your case here?
Too long, but then more importantly, they failed to show that Facebook had market power.
Yeah.
And so the judge said the FTC has 30 days to reformulate their case or bring it on a new issue. But it was a pretty strong dismissal. A dismissal so strong that it surprised Facebook executives.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. And so to reinstate it in court, they really have to come up with an entirely different angle.
Well, they just have to prove the allegation that Facebook has monopoly power, because everything that comes under that, like all the antitrust enforcement, the different remedies, potentially breaking up Facebook into its separate platforms, all of that is contingent on first proving that Facebook has monopoly power. Otherwise, why do you need to break it up? Like, all of the arguments are moot unless you can prove that central thing.
And did the judge say why it was disproven, or it's just like, nah, there's no monopoly power here?
Well, judges don't speak that quickly. I think now this is from secondhand reporting. I haven't read the judgment.
Yeah.
But Facebook, the FTC were alleging that Facebook had about 60% market share in the market.
In social media?
Yeah.
Okay.
And, Facebook was saying, we're facing all this competition, TikTok, of that. And the judge just didn't buy the FTC's, definition of the market or the amount of concentration in that market.
Fascinating.
Dismissed. Investors loved the news because, as we'll get into as we go through this episode, the biggest concern on investors' minds with Facebook is regulation and antitrust enforcement. And that was the thing that tipped Facebook over the line, got them to that $1 trillion mark.
Nice. Well, speaking of $1 trillion, Ren, it's always good to put this into perspective.
Yes.
We've said that there's 6 other companies out there that have $1 trillion valuation.
5
or more.
other, they were the 6th. Yeah.
They were the 6th. But then there are plenty of other companies that you consider to be massive, almost as influential as Facebook. You mentioned TikTok. There's the other social media players, Twitter, Snap. But their valuations are nowhere near.
Nowhere near.
Nowhere near.
Yeah. Well, TikTok is owned by ByteDance, which is private. So we looked at them and we looked at a few of the other publicly listed social media platforms. So ByteDance at its latest funding round was $140 billion. Twitter, $55 billion. Which, just think about how much people talk about Facebook and how much people talk about Twitter, or saw this on Twitter, or Twitter's destroying democracy, or we need to get Donald Trump off Twitter. But Twitter is a 20th of the size of Facebook in terms of market cap. So ByteDance 140, Twitter 55 billion, Snap 102 billion.
Double that of Twitter.
What?
Yeah,
I know. Pinterest 50 billion. So take those 4 together, and that's 347 billion.
I mean, the only thing
hold on. TikTok, Twitter, Snap, Pinterest is a third the size of Facebook. A bit over a third the size of Facebook.
And the thing I take from that is Twitter feels like a great opportunity at that valuation compared to, Snap at 102 billion?
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah. Do your own research.
Do your own
obviously.
research, yes, do your own research. Yeah, if you think about it though, like Twitter, Snap, Pinterest, and you just think about the engine that Facebook has, its marketplace, its advertising, it's what I think it has above the Twitter and the Snaps and the Pinterests. That's just my general feel.
Well, that's a great segue into the bull and the bear case. So Facebook is $1 trillion, just shy of $1 trillion as we're recording today. There's big expectations for the stock. There's a lot of questions about the company. Let's talk about both sides of the argument. where investors see future growth, and then what the bears see as potential pitfalls. So you are sitting in front
On
of
the
a bull,
bull, yes.
so you're going to have to take the bull case.
Okay, easy.
Tell me why investors are paying $1 trillion in market cap and why they think it could go higher.
Well, if we take the most recent example, there's continued failures of these antitrust suits brought against them. So no one's been able to actually come in and prove Facebook's is a monopoly, break them up. We hear all of this rhetoric around the government, the White House wanting to break up these businesses. Hasn't been able to happen yet. So, tick. We saw last week though, that we spoke about last week though, I can't remember her name. Lena Khan. So that'll be interesting to see what happens there.
Now she's the head of the FTC now, so
Yeah.
she's now got the responsibility to reformulate this case.
Wow, interesting.
Yeah.
Great sort of alignment of content from us. Look, advertising business can't go past the power of the advertising business. They have more than 10 million businesses advertising through them compared to 8 million when the pandemic started. So, in continuing to grow, I mean, we even know the power of advertising through Facebook, through our tiny business as well. And they have leading metrics when it comes to return on investment for digital advertising. So despite what everyone says around the harm that the advertising business can do, there's no doubt that it's incredibly powerful. Generates a bunch of money. Small businesses that have their shops, Facebook shops, 1.2 million active shops and 300 million shoppers every month. Huge. And then the continued growth of financial metrics. So you can't go past the quarterly revenue that they're pumping out. So a lot of ticks in the bull case.
Yeah, so there's a lot of reasons why investors are bidding the stock up, but I'm sitting in front of a bear,
Yes.
so I'm going to give the other side of that equation. Why Facebook, this might be as good as it ever gets. So, well, first of all, regulation and antitrust action isn't going anywhere. Sure, this case failed. The FTC are going back and licking their wounds. But in the same week, 6 bills came out of committee in the US Congress that deal with different elements of market power, antitrust, stuff like that. Joe Biden has recently, he's either announced a policy or signed an executive order around concentration in different markets. Like, it is top of mind for lawmakers at the moment. This issue isn't going away. Competition. Facebook's big now, but speak to anyone our age or younger and ask them if they use Facebook as much as they did 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Speak to a kid and ask them if they use Facebook. The answer's going to be no.
Yeah.
Social media is difficult. There's something in the Facebook employee handbook which Zuckerberg writes, like the internet is an unforgiving place. They don't even leave you ruins. They just forget you, or something like that. If Facebook fails to stay relevant, it doesn't matter how good their advertising metrics are if people aren't using the platform. So the competitive landscape and where the trend of users is going is important.
I do have a rebuttal to that,
Hit
but you're the bull, you're the bear, you're the bear case. It's interesting you say that because what I spoke about in terms of advertising small business, when we talk to our mates about how they use Facebook, it is still through like Marketplace, Facebook Marketplace. People love it.
When's the last time you bought something on Facebook Marketplace?
I've moved twice in the last 12 months and used it both times.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
but it's also like advertising. Like you have to go through them to access the Instagram, to access the other social platforms that we're using.
I guess my point is advertising platform, e-commerce platform is all good if you're a central hub of users. But if users go away, you can have the best advertising tools in the world, best targeting tools, best e-commerce tools, but people will just go to where the audience is. So business model is obviously a question for Facebook. Are there going to be increased protections around data? There are moves to make data more portable. What will that mean for Facebook? So there's that question. Misinformation, hate speech, fake news, the algorithm. What happens with all of that? We've touched on the question around user engagement. And then the final one that I just want to touch on, and we put an article in our weekly email this morning about it. Apparently, the Zuckerberg-Sandberg relationship is breaking down.
Really?
So Mark Zuckerberg, you obviously didn't read the email. Mark Zuckerberg, CEO, Sheryl Sandberg, COO. For 13 years, it's been the power couple of Silicon Valley. The classic example of a tech founder and a business-orientated COO that can just scale and build an organization to scale. Yeah, there was an article that was published that was sourced from an upcoming book talking about how their relationship didn't survive the Trump years. And, whilst they deny it, there's a number of indicators that point that maybe they're not as close as they used to be.
Is Zuckerberg going to be Zuckerberged?
No, I think
Or they'll get
it's
rid
more.
of Sandberg.
I think it's more that she's like being pushed out of the inner circle, and other executives are being sort of given more time with Zuckerberg. So look, that's not to say much. She's still working there. She's brilliant, and she's taken this platform and made it an incredible business. But there's just a lot of tension in the building at Facebook at the moment. I think a lot of stress, a lot of fires they're trying to fight.
Yeah, they are always trying to fight fires, and I've never actually owned the stock.
Neither.
Yeah, I will in research for this, looking at the stock price, and obviously it's done incredibly well. But I just don't think it's one for me. And I think to close out, Ren, we've spoken about the potential for it to be broken up. Is it going to be a good thing for Facebook? Could it be a good thing for Facebook?
That's probably the question.
Could it be
a lot of people look at a breakup and they despair. They're like, we want WhatsApp, Instagram, and Facebook to stay together. But there are historical examples where companies getting broken up into their constituent parts has actually enabled more growth. They're not constrained by more bureaucracy. They're not constrained by a limited budget. They're not constrained by competing priorities. If they separate the platforms, and this isn't a guarantee or anything, but it will be interesting to see, if Instagram can forge its own path, if WhatsApp can figure out commercialization on its own outside of Facebook, and they're free from the shackles of trying to be interrelated.
Together,
It'll be interesting to see what would happen.
Yeah.
So, if they do break up and every Facebook shareholder suddenly is a shareholder of WhatsApp, Instagram, and Facebook separately, it would be interesting to see how that plays out.
Where do allegiances lie?
Well, you just don't know all three.
Yeah, or I'd sell Facebook. But nice. So we'll keep an eye on this one first. The $6 trillion company, and it'll be interesting to see how quickly it can get to that $2 trillion mark if everything in the bull case plays out. But look, it certainly feels like there's a lot on the bear case side, particularly from the FTC, that is coming their way.
Are you saying I convinced you?
No. I'm just saying that it's even playing field.
Even playing field. And that's how we like to leave it. We'll give both sides of an issue and not give our own opinion. But look, stick around with us for the rest of this week. We've got a big week of AusBiz coming up. Some big interviews with Julian McCormick from Platinum, Owen Raskovich from Rask Invest. So you're going to want to stick around with us. We'll see you same time, same place tomorrow.
Equity Mates, from our mates at Spaceship. Investing made easy.